Well, we arrived on Arran about just under 2 years ago. So the first job really was to build a studio. So this is what I've done here on the site of where there were 3 previous sheds. And so I've only been working for about a year. My main area is ceramics and ceramic sculpture. So I've been doing a lot of test work and trying local clays. And there's not a lot of local clays on Arran, because it's mainly a volcanic island, but down in the south we found that there was some clay near Kilmorey, and Lag Distillery were interested in my work, and I managed to hook up with the project manager, and he gave me a load of earth where they've been building the Lag Distillery, and so I've been testing those testing those clays, and it looks as though I've got a clay that works particularly well. It'll be a sculptural clay. It'll be quite terracotta. We've fired it, and it looks as though it'll be quite a nice rich terracotta, so I'll be able to do some work which will have a degree of provenance about it, because it's from Lag itself. Yeah. So that's what we're doing. In the meantime, developing lots of ideas. Current little ideas that I'm experimenting with are the idea of the vessel. A vessel is related to obviously ceramic forms, but also to the idea of seafaring and boats and ships. So this one here is based on the idea of this is actually a press mould from a basket, which is down there. Actually made the mould from lime plaster, and then in the time-honoured way of the early sort of primitive boats called coracles, which were basket woven, we've used that technique, and then these are left to imagination a little bit, whether they're refugees, whether they're emigres, whether they're coffins, whether it's an ark, but there's a certain amount of imagination for the onlooker to bring to it. And this one has more of a Viking or Norse sort of quality to it. The idea is to, once it's fired, this is a small maquette version which might eventually end up as a big floor standing one, but the idea is it will stand on the oars and the boat will fly. So it suggests the idea of a spiritual journey. So so I'm exploring the idea of vessels through various forms, ship of fools, the idea of a crossing or a journey. So that sort of reference might come through. And these little characters here are the famous Arran slaughter. No such thing in the world, but it's a cross between a seal and an otter. And so it's hand modelled out of a sort of a brick clay, and it's sort of influenced partly by the pebbles, so it's quite handleable, and it's partly influenced by Inuit art. It has that kind of style. So these are little local characters. They will have their own characteristics. So making those, which are quite nice. Some of them I've pit fired, so it has a nice smoky sort of quality to them. A bit like this one over here. It's sort of one of the few ones that are left, actually. Just a simple pit firing, so low fired, but I quite like them to be able to be taken off so people can handle them, although you have to be a little bit careful with them. So the carbon black comes out, and in this case it's just mounted on a minke whale vertebrae, so I tend to use a lot of local found materials. Sometimes like that, combining clay and bone. Other things like these ones, which is another sort of a vessel. It's an experiment, but an old spring from a lorry tyre, a lorry spring I should say, is a bit like the waves, again another vessel. Or even little simple playing around with materials like old guttering from old crofts, the gutter supports, and then old fence wire mechanisms, and putting them together to create a kind of a cyclops, a fallen warrior, or a figure on crutches, or anyway. So a lot of experiments like that, and then on the bigger scale there's lots of sort of monoprint sort of works which are hand monoprint one-off, and then they're worked into. So this little series here is based on the lovely geology of Imica, which Imica Point, and so the actual silhouettes are taken from the actual shapes of the rocks themselves, the silhouettes with the water line, and then these have then been worked on top with pastes and tissue to give the sort of complicated surface that we've got. And some are simpler. So a lot of mixed media painting. And then there's this type, which again is just based on a monoprint, and then the print that comes out, which is partly controlled and partly left to the process itself, suggests whether it might be a forest with the verticality of one over there, or whether it's more coastal, and so I then work into it. So the process dictates the image. So a lot of mixed media work, a lot of I suppose it's a bit at the moment this year, it's a bit of a laboratory of ideas, that's what it is. And then I'll gradually refine the lines of inquiry I want to make as the year goes on. So there we go. That's why there's a lot of variety at the moment. I mean, even things like, I like the idea of people finding that things they would normally step on or throw away can actually be quite beautiful. So even found objects like these here, once they are isolated or given an ivory tower, given a context that is out of the normal situation, people can sort of see the beauty of things that are around them. Even the fact that the wood boring insects create their own drawing in nature, or the texture of lichen. So here this sort of casing has been cast in hydraulic lime plaster on a bed of rhododendron leaves from the castle gardens. So this is called Groundscape Curiosities. And so it sort of brings alive some things which are easily forgotten. Beauty is all around. So there's a lot of references to the seashore, to nature, and to the forgotten really in the work. And there we go, and a lot of fun along the way.
Wow.
A lot of the work is also inspired by other islands. So this little series here called Natural Geometries is a sort of a collection of things to do with, you can see the geometry through circles and forms and the diamond patterns which are found in the crystals that make up diamonds. And but in that perfection, nature distorts, and so there's actually imperfection. And that's partly what makes nature, the fact that it's a distorted view of something perfect, but in that imperfection there is a beauty, a hidden beauty in imperfection. So there's a complexity in the work, and so the aim is to try and aim for a clarity, or ultimately you go through a sense of confusion and complexity. And that's written in a lot of the works, even the ones up here to do with trees, the way trees communicate with each other, which look a little bit like, is it an aerial view of a canopy of the trees with the branches, or are they neurons in the brain? It's all about communication from one form of nature to another, which has been highlighted a lot in people's writings about the way trees communicate through fungi. So a lot of ideas coming through.
The Ents, Tolkien's Ents.
That's right.
You can actually feel creativity.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things, which is a bit confusing, but part of getting to this sort of clarity is going through a process, and that's what I'm going through at the moment. And some of these things will be thrown away, some of them will be put away, burnt, and then the ones that seem to have a resonance will sort of come forth. There's actually quite a nice quote here, which was written by Tony Davidson, the director of Kilmarnock Gallery, called "The Power of the Periphery." It gives me a sort of a sense of, why do I need to go away from the great cities and the metropolises to find a clarity? And I suppose it was in these two little sentences. Here at the edge, the air is clear, even if, as Yeats warned 100 years ago, the centre might be a little confused. Artists of the edge do what all artists should do. They explore feelings about nature, time, life and death, and they do it away from the chaotic distractions of power, money and celebrity that lie close to the centre. So it sort of gives a license for being here, rather than feeling you're guilty about not being at the hub. So that's that space that we all yearn for. I think that space where you find in places like this, and that's what hopefully will come through the work at some point over the coming few years.
So 2 years, you said?
Well, 2 years this September.
Yeah.
Built the shed last year and have started producing this year. So just sorting out a kiln at the moment. Converting an old electric kiln which was donated to me by some friends up in Lochranza, and I'm converting it to gas so that I can fire the ceramics and so forth there. Eventually it'd be quite nice to do something a bit more exciting rather than just use a gas kiln and do some wood firing and alternative firing techniques, because ceramics is a wonderful material to work with, clay, but some of the skills are being lost these days because in a lot of schools and colleges they're disappearing. So it's important to keep some of these skills going, you know, like stonemasonry and all those kinds of things. So.
Yeah.
But wonderful place to live and work. Even these little spherical forms here, which spheres are always, again, some of these natural geometries which are nice to feel, and there's something wholesome about it, but this links together sort of the ideas of nature and geology and time, but they're very tactile, and they're based on the idea that, you know, some of the Neolithic stone forms which were buried with their ancestors are called Petrospheres, stone balls, and they were beautifully carved and patterned, but these have been taken up by some people on Arran to say you could actually put soil in them and plant sedums in them and have them in gravel gardens. So there's some of the work might have a slightly semi-functional or functional idea to them, combining something that's a piece of sculpture but could also be useful in the sense that it could be utilitarian in a way. So yeah, it's an exciting process, you know, the whole idea. So we'll see where we are in a year's time. So, and that's it really.
That's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
What an amazing spot you have.
It's a beautiful spot, isn't it? Yeah. This is called the studio is called Gobhlach. I hope I've pronounced it right in Gaelic. Something like Gobhlach. G-O-B-H. The B-H is sort of silent, a silent V, and it's the name of the burn. And the burn, Gobhlach, means fort. It comes from two rivers, and it used to run the mill here at Pern Mill, because Pern Mill, that people don't always know that Pern Mill is from about 1870. It was built as part of a mill for producing bobbins for Clark's cotton industry in Glasgow. So the mill here made perns, called Pern Mill, and it was run off the burn, off the Gobhlach, and there was a runnel that ran to an overshot wheel, which is long since gone. And that's the Pern Mill which we are attached to, or virtually wrap around here. So the studio is named after the burn, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
It's quite lovely actually, because the burn is, when I came here you could hear all these different sounds and different, and there was a lovely poem by Nan Shepard, and it always reminded me of this burn. It's called The Singing Burn by Nan Shepard, and it reads, "Oh Bernie with the glass white shiver, singing over stone so quick, so clear, 100 year, singing one song alone, from crystal sources fed forever, from cold mountain springs, to persuade the haunted ear, it new creates the tune it sings." It's a very beautiful poem, and it's about it being almost like a friend, almost, isn't it? But it also provides energy, and there's an energy in that.
And there's another one about the burn.
Yeah, the other one was written by my mother-in-law actually. So, do you do art, or you?
A little bit. Mainly like I've got an art tablet, so digital.
Okay, yeah.
I do some pencil paintings.
And is this gentleman related to you? Or
It's my dad.
oh, it's your dad, okay. Yeah.
That's almost like a piece of a dragon.
It looks, yeah, it's amazing what just some piece of wood can be shaped into by nature itself, can't it? There's a lot of references to Africa here because that's where me and my wife met, in Sierra Leone. So there's quite a few connections with that. Because I used to work in Sierra Leone to help set up pottery and
Right.
brick making and so forth. So that's where a lot of the knowledge of pioneer pottery came from, really.